Creative people are the trusted communicators of our society, a society that is ridden with more fear, loneliness, and anxiety than ever.
We recognize that creative people and those championing their work should be honored for who they are and treated with care as they devote their lives to articulating the human experience.
My name is Samantha Jervey.
My name is Emily Falvey.
Together, we're the co-founders and co-host of Mind Over Melody, a podcast focused on wellness for artists, songwriters, and music industry professionals.
We pray our conversations can be a safe place for you to rest, grow, contemplate, and be reminded that your wellness matters first and foremost, and ultimately leads to the kind of creativity that sustains and abounds.
Thank you for listening to Season 1 of Mind Over Melody. We'd like to give a special thank you to our sponsors for this season, Truist and Porter's Call, and to our editor, Cooper Carr. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or a qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental health issue. If you are experiencing a crisis or need immediate help, please contact a local mental health service or emergency services. Other resources are available on our website at mindovermelody.com. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Mind Over Melody. My name is Emily Falvey, and I'm here with my extraordinary co-host, Sam Jervey. We're having a little bit of an impromptu conversation today together with recent news that we've just found out about the passing of Liam Payne, a beloved member of one of our childhood favorite bands, One Direction. And it's really kind of struck a chord with both of us internally and our, narrative that already existed in the impetus of this whole podcast, which is, looking out for each other and prioritizing wellness in a space that can be really difficult to do so. And so I recently stumbled across a post by a songwriter and an artist named Victoria Canal that talked about the death of Liam and just everything surrounding it. And it's a little bit long, but I think it's a really beautiful take. And I thought that I could read that and kind of get our conversation going. So this post was on October 18th, 2024, and it says, regarding Liam Payne and the lethality of the internet/the music industry. If Liam Payne's unexpected early death hit you as hard as it did me, you're probably thinking about what it says about the state of our society and mental health in this industry. You've probably heard the details of the 911 emergency call, seen the pictures of the trashed hotel room, read the messages of condolences. Just days before his death, Liam was relentlessly torn apart online for seemingly douchey displays of ego, dancing at Niall Horan's show in Argentina. Anonymously, millions of people online mocked him as being overconfident, out of touch, arrogant. This is a person who, at age 14, was contractually obligated to fulfill an all-too-rigorous promo and touring schedule, was way too famous to function normally, and was driven into alcohol and drugs to feel any semblance of relief. The reason I feel so affected by this particular situation is that even after achieving everything an artist could possibly hope for and having the financial stability only one could ever dream of, this young man died alone in the hands of addiction, thinking the entire world hated him. On a side note, I'd also heard that he had lost his record deal a few days prior, and so I'm sure a lot of the lashing out had to do with, probably his contractual relationship ending with his record label. The post continues by saying, as an artist who feels like she's desperate to, quote unquote, get there, white-knuckling every moment in a state of severe stress in the hopes of one day arriving to where an artist like Liam was, I feel completely duped by the promises of what success is in this industry and how it will make me feel as a human being and myself. The truth is, the more eyes that are on you, the more authority people believe to have over their anonymous cruelty and opinions about you. He was known by millions and felt known by none. How tragic is that? I guess I'm saying all this to say, as an artist, I'm arriving at the realization that success in music cannot be my reason, my purpose. It becomes clearer to me with every passing day that what truly matters is the people closest to you knowing you, truly finding value in yourself outside of your art, outside of your product, your followers, your stream, your brand, your bank account, etc. Now more than ever, I feel this desperate desire to connect to the artists around me and say, you are not alone. I am not alone. We are not alone.
It's like hearing those words, there's almost just this silence that is required around it. And we also, to acknowledge like this is a sensitive topic, and we want to be respectful around any sort of publicized death, you know, especially when these things are not by choice to be so public. But I don't know, there's so many things, and you and I were talking about this offline before we started recording. Like, I think there's two key important messages that we can take away and that require us to keep revisiting as a collective, not only society, but also like industry at large, is, okay, how do you define success? Not only as an artist or a songwriter, but how do you define success also as an industry executive? Like, this is across the board. I think that cycle of success, the ego that we wrestle with, and then who holds us accountable, right? Like, how do we hold each other accountable? There's a self-accountability, and then there is I think a collective responsibility on our behalf in the industry of, you are so close to what TMZ can take 1 second of and create a narrative around, but you're seeing it firsthand, maybe months, years before it arrives to that place. And I think that is something I've always wrestled with in the music industry, is maybe the absence at times of accountability, because we put these people on pedestals, right? And it's not just artists. Like, we do it with songwriters, we do it with executives. Like, they become brands. You know, they become influencers on social media, and they feel untouchable in a sense. But then there is a group of people who also may be like rooting for you on the public facing line, but then also kind of, I won't say rejoice, but like there's a little celebration, and not saying in death, but like when you fail, right? Like when you...
Yes, public humiliation.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Oh my
I've
gosh.
seen social media posts about, I mean, on a smaller scale, I've had a few friends kind of have public come aparts as songwriters.
Yeah.
And I think as creatives, we're so emotionally volatile and are quick to make a knee-jerk reaction on the internet about something that's quote unquote tea, which I'm guilty of. I usually will be like, what's the tea? What's going on?
Totally.
But I think sometimes that gossip can be weaponized, and we forget that it's people's actual lives and selves. And people in our cancel culture world today are so quick to be like ruled out or exiled, especially in a small community like Nashville. Once the word gets out about something, it's kind of like if you've done something quote unquote unforgivable, then you're just kind of SOL. And how do you come and help those people get back to themselves after they've seemingly lost everything? And I'm sure that's how Liam felt in that moment. If just like your professional life is dwindling, people are calling you horrible things on the internet, how do you come back from feeling like you failed and you've lost everything? It's really hard, and I think we don't talk about it enough.
Yeah, it's lonely and isolating. And I mean, the word that was screaming as you were saying that, it's dehumanizing. And I think,
yes,
I was talking with a group of people yesterday, industry personnel, and that was a topic that came up of like, hey, it's okay. In fact, it is expected that you're still going to bring your own humanity to this job. And this was a management team supporting artists, but it's almost like, I think depending on where you are in your corner of the business, it can be really almost this unspoken expectation that I have to lay aside my needs for the sake of others, or I don't have space for me to even consider like my own problems, you know? And I think for artists that looks different because it is a lot more public facing. But what a shame that we've created a culture that is legitimately like, it struggles to embrace one's humanity and messiness that is inherent to the human experience. like we can't hold their talent alongside, you know, their mess. And that's not to say, like, yes, when you reach a certain level of success, which again, what is success? What does that mean to you? There is a responsibility when you have eyes on you, and yet that does not mean you shoulder the world. You know, that doesn't mean
Absolutely.
like you can't be, I don't know, like I think about 14 years old being signed to a band like that and having the rocket ship that One Direction was. And so we see this with so many like Disney artists. It's like that you're arrested in development at that age because who continued to steward you and who continued to guide your inner world when you were on the road and everyone was changing around you and everyone was like hyping you up, right? It becomes more about like, hey, what can you do for me? Or, oh my gosh, you're amazing. Oh my gosh, I want to be close to you. Versus, hey, just checking in still on those like everyday human milestones of development, right? I think sometimes that gets neglected. Yep. And then you have these like big outbursts and a lack of like, it's, I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying, but.
It does. And I feel like I think back, I'm going way back here, but to my my contract law class at Belmont, I remember the components of a contract and a valid contract. One of them was you have to be at least 18 years of age. And so I think about the ethics of child stardom. And usually it's well-meaning parents saying, you have such this extraordinary talent. Yeah. Let's put you on X Factor or put you on American Idol or sign you up for a Disney audition to try and get that exposure. It also brings up for me the everything going on with Diddy and the lawsuits involving him. And I've seen a lot about Justin Bieber being mixed up in how at times Diddy was kind of a conservator. He was his guardian at certain points in time because Diddy was entrusted with Justin Bieber for whatever reason. And I think about just like, before the age of 18, can you knowingly sign yourself up to do that in good conscience? Or it's just kind of an interesting thought of how do we protect minors particularly? I think everyone deserves this protection bar none.
Yeah.
But it brings up for me, Al Andrews always talks about prehab and how we like should be doing this work, front loading it so that it doesn't get to the point that we're at and discussing currently. Sadly, we have so many examples of this happening and like the cliches like the 27 Club and things that just, you know, things that grieve my heart about our industry. But I'd love to know, Sam, from your therapeutic perspective, some of the main things that you think would be self-care mechanisms that can help to protect from things like this happening, especially for young people, but for everybody who decides to embark upon a creative pursuit.
Yeah. Well, I think fundamentally it is going to go back to community and places you feel known. And like whether that is through... Because as you were speaking, something that struck me is like, man, this is why I'm so passionate about systemic healing, and especially like rooted in family of origin, because these are generational things. Like, I think parents have really good intentions, as you said, when they're taking their kid to the audition because their kid really wants that. However, no one really knows what they're signing up for until it happens, right? And then if you don't have like the emotional intelligence, or if you don't have your own, like let's say the parents don't have wise counsel around them and they're just trying to figure it out too, that chaos then bleeds into the child's life, the child star. And then everyone is kind of at this entrusted in the counsel of who's come around them. And let's be real, that's not always the wisest counsel, especially people who like go after the grabs early on because it might look cool. You just don't have that like wisdom. So I think, I don't know, especially for parents and for children in those circumstances, like being able to ask for help and like resource yourself. I mean, I think of like Christy Williams shedding the limelight, you know, this being such a key point of her work. I was about to call it ministry, you know, like it truly like,
I mean, kinda.
yeah, like, and from her own personal experience of raising a daughter who walked through that experience. So knowing there's resources like that out there, because the internet can be just like a black hole of things and people want to take your money. Not to say everyone's bad, you know, but I think that like being educated or trying to educate yourself, asking for help, really challenging opinions, knowing that you can press back. And if something, like, let's say if you press back against someone who is interested early interest, I think the good ones can withstand and they will allow that challenge because they honor your autonomy. And that's what you're looking for in a partnership. Versus if you feel bulldozed, like if you feel that there is a fragility into which they react and they like almost threaten to pull the deal because you're being somehow a problem, that's a, dare I say, a red flag, right? Like pause and then move slowly through that. And so I think that's something we can do. Definitely, like, I think family therapy, if you're dealing with parent-child dynamics, right? Because a lot of parents start out also as like their manager to their child in some ways, and you have no idea what you're doing unless you're in the business. But certainly when you are 18 years of age and older, like get into counseling if you can. And we are so gifted with a lot of resources here in Nashville, specifically, just to give a plug. I mean, we've listed so many of them on our website as well, but like Porter's Call doesn't ask a dime of artists. You know, if you meet the criteria, go get in there. Even if you don't have anything that's blaring in your face right now, like the prehab concept, right? Of build a team who knows you. And it makes me think there was a list Al put out when I first saw him speak years ago at like CMA alongside Chris Lacey and some others I really admire. And it was like being known by someone, you know, be sent off by someone and be welcome home by someone. I don't think it's by mistake that you see a lot of people as they rise to fame. The ones who I think are doing it well are those who they've maintained their community, people who loved them or knew them and had an intrigue and curiosity before they were this very big brand. Or I've seen artists come back to those people, you know, after they've tried to kind of fit in with the successful crowd. Maybe that feels empty. And I think at the end of the day, it's like we just need places to be known. And if that's not with your family of origin, then go create your family, you know, like your chosen family. And it takes work. Group work can be really powerful, which I think is a big driver for a lot of people going to on-site, you know, outside of here in Tennessee. It's a really big group dynamic. But those are just a few things like that I think kind of come to mind.
I love all those things. Yeah, I look at like Ed Sheeran I feel like he's a beacon of somebody who has done his work and is committed to his family. And he's at the top of his game, one of the most famous people on earth. But at the same time, I look at him and he married a girl from his childhood. He still has a solid relationship with the people that he grew up with. He still works with people that he started and came up with early on and remains loyal to those people. And I think there is something to the being known aspect. And it's very hard. And I don't even, as a songwriter, it feels different than, when you're globally famous. But I think about once you reach a certain threshold of success, it's hard to discern whether people want to be around you for what you can do for them or whether they actually love you for you.
I wanted to ask you, in your experience, having signed to a very notable songwriter and his publishing company, like Smack holds a really respected name in town and I think beyond Nashville. And so I'm wondering from your experience, Emily, and maybe this is even just songs you've been a part of, people who are, especially given your involvement with higher education and mentorship, as you've stewarded younger people. What has this looked like for you in the kind of I don't know, having people look up and admire you? And there's lots of questions in there, but I'm just curious from your experience what that's looked like.
Yeah. I think I'd be lying if I said it was easy, because I think there's a lot of discernment required. And I think at the heart, my hope is always to give better than I got as far as the mentorship aspect. And and that requires a deep well to pull from. And I find that when I'm in a daily exercise of pouring out, I think one of my mentors in college said songwriting is a service industry. And I think that's really true of songwriters exist to support the artists who are servicing the song, so I'm at the heart of it, usually walking into a room every day and pouring out. And so I have had to be vigilant, and I'm still on a search at times to find people to pour back into me, because I do a lot of pouring out on a daily basis, and that can be exhausting. And I wish we talked about that more from a songwriter perspective of we're showing up, and there are days that we don't get a lot back because, a lot of artist facing people have, their songwriters are kind of dispensable. We can show up, and a lot of times there's other producers or other top liners that can do the same job that we can do. And if a record doesn't perform well, an artist can move on and say, you know what, that squad didn't produce a fruitful record for me, so I'm going to move along. And so for me, finding the people outside of work, the people inside of work are so crucial, and I love them. And I feel really grateful to be surrounded by an extraordinary musical community. But like I just referenced with the Ed Sheeran example, I think people who have known me and loved me before I ever had a publishing deal, those are the people that I return to because I know they're my safest attachments. My family is priority number one to me because they love me for who I am and not what I can do for them. There are even friends that I have from college that, yes, I was in Nashville pursuing a songwriting major and doing all that kind of stuff, but we were just sorority sisters and we were just hanging around and talking about boys and life and all that. And those are the people that I think feel the most trustworthy to me because they love me for Emily Falvey, the person, not Emily Falvey, the songwriter. I love the people who love Emily Falvey, the songwriter too. It's just, I think I've had to learn how to tell the difference of which relationships I can turn to be edified and which relationships I go to be professionally poured into. And so that's, I think it's just compartmentalizing and finding different buckets, if that makes any sense.
Yes. The buckets piece so resonates. That was what struck me, is that old saying of don't put all your eggs in one basket. And that is really easy to do in this industry, right? Because
it's a lifestyle.
Yes. It's 24/7. You are applauded. You are rewarded for giving your soul to this business. I think by many companies and by many standards, spoken and unspoken. However, what struck me about what you were saying is also hearing that as a reflection of how people practice self-care today, going back to your question a few minutes ago, of like that, I think alone is a powerful tool for self-care. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's really hard to build friendships in adulthood once like your clubs, your classes, everything is stripped away. It takes a lot more intentionality. But all of that said, like, I was just thinking about hearing this one manager speak about, you know, what has been powerful for me is surrounding myself by people who have no tie to the music industry. And
Amen.
Going over and watching like a Vols game or whatever it may be on a Saturday and just drinking a beer, you know, and being known without it being tied to what you said, what you can do, how well you can perform in the room, what songs you have on the charts, what power player lists you're on. You know, there is always going to be a list. There's always going to be a comparative element in this industry. And I think even going back to where we started in this conversation, maybe that's where the tension lies in trying to be known by people, because this industry is also inherently built on competition. And so in a world where we look at things or we're taught from a very young age to look at things from a very black and white perspective, how do we hold the nuance of, I can, you know, have my own professional pursuits and really be driven and want to achieve those things, and I can root for you, you know, and I can still applaud you and be really proud of you when you also have those wins. And then what's most telling is, how do we show up for each other amongst our failures too, or our disappointments? I think that's where it's most telling and revealing about friendships and what people's intentions are.
And I have been burned at the same time. You know, I'm such a basket. I'm like I put all my eggs in a basket, and that's one of my, you know, it's one of my best and worst qualities is
it's easy
when
to
you
keep
have my
track
heart
of
or
them
you have
there.
my well, also I just am like, I'm unfortunately a creative with deep feelings and always have been. And so if you have my heart or if you have my attention, I will give that. I am a full sender. You know, I want to be your friend for life. I want to, like, you know, and so I think in the times that somebody has been in my life for a season and then moved on for whatever reason, it's easy for me to take that as a personal reflection of, well, I just must not be that good, or I must, you know, I must not be able to do enough for them. I must not be cool enough on the social hierarchy or whatever. I think I just in those moments want to remind myself of where I'm anchored and what I'm rooted in. And so I think identity is so crucial, and doing that personal work also is kind of where it all begins, of who am I? What do I value? We've talked a lot about that as we've ideated this podcast, Sam, of like values-based leadership and values-based identity. And so I think getting pretty honest and clear with yourself as you start this journey, or wherever you're at in this journey, of how do I want to show up, and how do I assemble a team and assemble a group of friends that aligns with that? Because there are going to be people that swirl around in your professional orbit that don't have those same values that you do, or have the same ideas of that as you do. But not letting those people be in like the circles of friendship, like not letting those people come to the inner circle, because that's going to end up being, you know, a disparity between what you guys want anyway. I would be remiss, Sam, I think, as we wrap up, to ask if there's somebody listening right now who is in crisis, or who has gone past the prehab point of things, and they're in more of a Liam Payne type of a scenario where things are looking dark and people don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, whether it's personally or professionally, if they're at rock bottom in their addiction, if they're, you know, having dark thoughts about not wanting to be on earth anymore, you know, where do people turn, and what would you say are the best crisis resources for people in our space?
Yeah, it's a really important question. First of all, pick up the phone. I know the
Yep.
firefighter is telling you that like when you reach that place, you feel stuck beyond measure. And really where
Yep.
I think I see suicidal ideation most is that it's not that a lot of people want to escape their circumstances, or escape life. It's that they feel so stuck and like there's no other option within their circumstances. So pick
Yeah.
up the phone, and it can be anonymous in every way. The Suicide and Crisis Hotline has both a text feature, a call feature, and an online chat feature. So whatever you feel is most like approachable for you in that moment, do it. You will be connected
Yep.
with a crisis specialist, someone who has been trained. And
Yep.
look, this could be also like, there's also, I'm thinking, a domestic violence hotline. I know that's something different, but
Yeah.
these resources are readily available. I'm just triple checking because I don't. Yes, 988. And then if you do have a
Yep.
therapist, and you have been working with someone, and let's say a lot of clinicians will do what's called a safety plan. So, one, if you don't have a clinician, get plugged in, right? Again, it's so essential in
Yep.
being known. But that safety plan is going to assess like what are all your resources? Because when you're in that place, you're not thinking with clarity. And so just trying to show yourself grace in that as well. That's why we have to reach
Absolutely.
out, and throw the lifeline out. So yeah, I hope if anyone
Yep.
finds themselves in that place, 988, 911, go to your nearest hospital, like whatever you feel is most attainable, do it.
Yep. You're valued. And just like that post said at the beginning of this episode, I am not alone. You are not alone. We are not alone.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for tuning in. We're here. We're so grateful to be a resource and hopefully a space where you can feel surrounded, because we're all just trying to figure out how to be human together. And it has its moments for sure. But just know that you are dearly loved, and your creativity, your art, your willingness to support that art, whatever your role is in this community that we're in, you matter. So we're grateful for this time, and we'll be talking to you soon.